Finally, I am done reading Battle Royale by Kushan Takami. And it's not like it was a bad book. It was a really good book. I enjoyed it. It's just long. It is 600 plus pages, including I don't know, like afterwards, so, like this interview with the author, which is kind of insightful because it gives you a lot of background on how his process in writing this book, or like where some of his ideas came from with writing this book. Overall, I enjoyed the story. It was very long, it was very detailed, sometimes repetitive in a good way and kind of in a bad way. And I did appreciate the tone. It was a very dark, kind of gloomy tone to it. Like, yes, it is very much a story of students being thrown into like this death match arena. Basically, if this was a movie, it would have just this gloomy like cinematography layer, this like gray layer over the entire movie, that you could just sense that everything is just dark and gray, and like it's always raining, it's always cloudy in this moment because it's so dark and it's so bad and just horrible. I also found myself comparing this to The Hunger Games, being that around the time I think The Hunger Games came out, or I think The Hunger Games movie, like basically I heard like people saying that, oh, Suzanne Collins got a lot of her inspiration for this book. Although she said, I've read interviews where she said that her inspirations came from like her watching cable news and reality TV, and like the ideas kind of came to her and came together in that way for her. But while reading this, I saw a lot of similarities in both stories that weren't just like, oh, I get where the similarities come up. It's just anything that, you know, anybody could have came up with this idea and they just executed it differently. It's like a lot of the things are very similar to each other. They do take different avenues. It's different. There are differences, but a lot of the story just they seem very similar. Even if Suzanne Collins says she's never read or heard of Battle Royale, she's probably at least seen the movie, and that kind of contributed to her ideas, because like so much of what happened in this book, so many elements of it are very similar to The Hunger Games. Basically, I'm saying I don't fully believe that Suzanne Collins has never come into contact with the story of Battle Royale, and it has not influenced The Hunger Games. I still do love The Hunger Games, but I also love Battle Royale. I am so glad that they both exist. I kind of, now that I've read this one, and he's also talked about like Stephen King being one of his inspirations, and The Longest Walk is one of the inspirations for this book. I kind of want to read The Longest Walk now. I also kind of want to watch The Running Man, because that's also something that kind of inspired The Hunger Games a little bit, I heard too. And I think it kind of also had some inspiration in this too. There are 42 students who are taking part in this Battle Royale. And in that first like 0 chapter prologue, I don't know exactly, it's a 0 chapter, but it could also be considered prologue, but 0 chapter. In that one, we are introduced to all of the students. We do focus on like a few students who are really like the protagonists, and the ones that we really like, the main protagonist and the supporting protagonist. For the most part, we get introduced to all of them, and in that first chapter, I was almost kind of like a little turned off to the book. But not so much turned off, I was a little bored. And in reading it, I realized that, okay, we're probably kind of establishing these students, but I don't think the rest of the book is going to be as boring as this first chapter is. And it really wasn't, because this first chapter, it established these characters, but it also, as you read along throughout the book, you mentally call back to the 0 chapter as you read along it further in the book, because so much of what happens in the book, how people interact and all that, it makes you think back to that 0 chapter when you first were introduced to them. That 1 chapter starts off slow, but its cliffhanger kind of ends off really nicely to kind of get you really stoked. And almost, it is pretty much the inciting incident. You're just kind of like, really like, where are we going? What's gonna happen? What's this all about? I want to know. You basically stick to like 3-4 characters, 5 tops, who you get invested in their story as you go along. The main protagonist is Shuya Nanahara, And for me, I don't know, I just found him so naive. Like, I get it, he's very kind-hearted, and apparently he's a little clueless. I mean, he was kind of clueless, and that came with his naivete, but also it was just like, it kind of irritated me after a while, because I was just like, so you're not getting it? You're like, what? I get it, you really want everybody to be, but you want everybody to play along and be cool, but it's like, come on, come on. And I almost feel like now it makes me think that maybe PETA might have been, actually no, PETA still got it. PETA still understood that this was like Hunger Games, this is what we gotta do. I hate it, but I gotta do what I gotta do. Shia is still like, oh, let's try to make shit like, oh my gosh, we can't. And I'm just like, I get it, I admire that about you, but everybody ain't thinking like you. Yeah, I get it. You think I know my class? Like, no, bitch. This is not how this works. But aside from him, one of my favorite characters was Kawada, Shogo Kawada. Oh my gosh, like, I'm telling you, he was like my favorite character. He was my favorite character because he's just like the, masculine, mysterious, silent type, but he's so caring, and he's so like, like, he's just there. He's like the type that can protect, but he's also very like, like, he's got that soft spot. He cares about people. He may be mysterious, and you might think, oh, because he's just like this big, like, just tough looking guy, this tough masculine looking guy, like, oh, he's just probably like a total asshole. And in reality, he's not an asshole. He's like such a sweetheart, and he's just like the coolest. Like, I was just watching the Hot Ones on YouTube with Shia LaBeouf, and I realized that, I mean, I've always kind of had a thing for Shia LaBeouf ever since like maybe like Terminator. No, you mean Terminator. Ever since Transformers, Terminator's still in my head because of this goddamn book. But looking at, like, I'm telling you, Shia LaBeouf, they right to call him LaBeouf because he is buff, okay? I saw him sitting in that chair with his legs with the tattoos, and I was just like, bitch, that's my type, nigga, that's my type. You see, like, I'm telling you, especially Shia LaBeouf. Basically, I say all this to say that Shia LaBeouf is very much giving me Shogo Kawada energy, and Shogo Kawada is pretty much giving me Shia LaBeouf energy, where he's just like, he's this tough masculine type, but he's just so very caring, because Shia LaBeouf opened up this theater in Slauson for, like, I don't know, for kids and stuff like that, and helping kids and stuff to get into the arts and theater and stuff like that. So that's super cool, and he's just very, very like cool. Like, if you see him in the Hot Ones video where he's like talking to the host, and he's like complimenting the host on like his hosting and stuff like that, I was like, yo, it's got some men who wouldn't give a shit. They would just talk a whole bunch of shit because they're a guy, and he's just like complimenting this guy and telling him like, yeah, you're like, I like what you do. I'm just like, I just hope Shia never gets like problematic in the racist, sexist, Me Too. You just never know anymore. People, I'm just praying no for Shia LaBeouf. He's got to stay great, okay? A great guy, like, but that's besides the point. I'm still talking about Shia LaBeouf. When that's telling you how much I love Kawada, because Kawada is giving me, like, he reminds me of, like, just that masculine, like, sweetheart inside. Like, he's just a sweetheart on the inside. He's just a good guy. He's there. He's gonna be like, he's caring, he's protective, he's smart, he's intelligent, he's all these cool things. He's doing great things for people. Like, fucking love it. Like, where's my guy like that? Like, where's that? But shout out to Kawada, Shogo Kawada. He's like one of the best characters in this book. Shout out to him, the best. I did have my issues with Noriko Nakagawa. I think it's Noriko Nakagawa. I had my issues with Noriko because I felt like, as a young woman character, she was a little too silent for my taste. Most of the book, I felt like she wasn't given. I mean, it wasn't like she wasn't in control of anything, but I still felt like she could have done more, but maybe that's me just kind of like asking more of a character that this is who their personality set out to be. They're a quiet character. I will say that a lot of the young women characters in this book, they had a lot of agency. There was a diverse set of personalities and characters when it came to young women in this book. That I will say, I have to applaud the character. As much as I felt like, oh, Noriko could have done more, I also kind of have to understand that Noriko was not, maybe that is her personality, because there were other young women characters within this book that weren't just like waiting to be killed off, or they were just like always hiding, or they weren't willing to do anything, they weren't willing to move, or somebody had to tell them to do something, or it was just the guys making moves. Like, everybody was making moves, and that was including the girls, and they were even doing more kick-ass, badass, crazier things than guys were. So I'm just like, yo, great representation when it came to young women characters. There was another character who I felt was a more capable version of Shia, who is Shinji. He just felt so much more, I don't know, he just felt like he was a mirror version of Shia, but just more capable, just more likable, because he was just not as like naive and like dumb and silly. And I guess Shuya was supposed to be more relatable to the average reader. He wants the best out of people. Shinji was like, yo, just the reality of things. I have some knowledge. Let's run with that. Let's make shit happen. He was the fucking action hero of the fucking book. And I appreciated him for that. But I also kind of hated his story arc, because I was just like WTF. Like, he started late and he ended early. Like, what was up with that? Didn't. Like, I was a little annoyed with that. You know, you got me, like, what is going on? Okay. It was, yeah. All these different students that we were introduced to at the beginning of the book, they had their moments throughout the book where you got to connect with them and you got to understand who they were. They got some background and development. I appreciated that, because that was like, it made the story more interesting. It made it like so much more exciting. It really made that zero chapter really matter throughout the entire story. It just made you see like, yo, it all connects, like all of it connects so much. It takes a lot of work. It took a lot of work, because I understand partially why it's 600 pages, because there was so much background and development that was put into this book, but also the villains were very interesting and compelling. There were villains. And it goes back to the development and background. These were villains that you got to understand why they were the way they were, why they did the things they did, and you could understand why they made the moves that they made. You didn't have to agree, but you understood. A part of the plot of this book, besides the death and the characters connecting, was romance that was added to the story, added to the characters, because they are teenagers. Although you might think this is a death match, there was room for romance. Sometimes the romance was like, okay, can we not right now? And then there are times when it's just like the romance added to characters' motivation, because it's teenagers, like they're kind of running on hormones, emotions, and all this stuff. So you understand why love and romance, even in this like very deathmatch violent situation where it's all about survival, they're still gonna be like, I care about people, I care about you, I love you, all this stuff, I want to be with you. I saw someone's comment when I said I was gonna read this book, and they mentioned the romance aspect, and I thought like, oh, it's just gonna be like one romantic plot, subplot, whatever. There's a whole lot of romance going on in this book, but some of it, like I said, it was like, can we not talk about this right now? This is not a good time to talk about romance. It's a little too high pressure. Somebody's about to jump out the bushes and kill you. We don't need to talk about this right now. And then there were times when it's just like, okay, I understand why this romance is here, because it makes sense for why these characters did the things that they did. Also, there was one, I almost want to say queer-coded, but he's not queer-coded. He is actually very much, it is very much as plainly stated as possibly can be said, that the character is a gay character or queer. His death in my head is very memorable. He is very memorable. It's very memorable. It's very kill your gays or whatever. Also, there was a relationship. I forgot exactly what the relationship was. They were like friends, but and they weren't written to be explicitly gay, and they were also weren't exactly coded to be like gay, but it was two girls that were like friends, and it just kind of felt, I don't know, as I read it, yeah. It's the two. It's what is it? It's Yuki or Yukimi. I forgot. I think it's Yuki, and Yakami. I forgot exactly. It's the two girls up in the house in the observatory. Those girls, they were giving me lesbian vibes. Like they were like best friends or whatever. But I just kind of felt like I would love it if those two were like, we're in love with each other and we are scared to die. Like, oh, they gave me like, they weren't explicitly queer coded, but they were queer coded for me. They were my headcanon of like lesbian girls, and I would have loved to have, I don't know, a story with them, or them actually being just like openly like queer girls within the book. As a matter of fact, you think about their backstory. One of them is like a church girl. As a matter of fact, they both met in church, but one's more of a church girl, and I think the other one's, I don't know, one's more like shy and the other one's not as shy. Basically, they could have hooked up and like been bumping purses like all night long, and I would appreciate it. Like, it would have been so cute. Like, scissor, sister, red up, sis. I would have appreciated it so much. They could be getting their life while on the island, while everybody else is killing each other, and they're just getting their life in the bushes, in a house, something, you know, whatever works. That would have been a cute romance. The story is very descriptive. He's very descriptive with his writing. He talks like, he gets this, that's the thing. Mr. Takami's writing, it's descriptive. You can really see it in your head play out like a movie. And that is something that he did mention in the Q&A portion of the book. He writes in a manner that is like camera angles. I understand why the book was so easily and quickly adapted into being a movie. Throughout the book, reading it, I really saw it. He's so very detailed, but there's also a con to that detail, because sometimes he got so detailed and descriptive with certain scenes that you'd read it and it read like it was in slow motion. So you're like in a very action-packed scene, and like somebody's throwing a punch and it's just moving almost so slowly. Like the whole process is just slow, because he's just giving you every detail step by step. And then there are times when he doesn't use as much detail just to, I guess, emphasize how fast something happened. You're reading one paragraph or one sentence, and then all of a sudden next sentence something happened, and you're like, what just happened? You have to go back and reread just to be sure that you didn't miss something. He took out some of the detail just to speed things up, or just to kind of surprise you, and you felt like you missed something. There are times that it's so well executed that like it just flows easily. I do feel like there were times within this book that I feel like some of the stuff could have been cut. There were certain conversations and dialogue that could have been cut because they felt unnecessary. There were even chapters that I felt could have been cut because I didn't feel like they progressed the plot. They didn't help us to get to know the characters any more than we'd already gotten to know them. Or even if it helped us get to know them even more, it's like, it doesn't matter. It's not relevant to now. It isn't relevant to what we already know. It doesn't make us more endeared or less endeared to them than we already are. It's just like, it's just another piece of information about them that we can know now. And it's like, yeah, we know more, but like, I don't care. Can we progress the story forward? There was quite a bit that I feel like could have been cut from this. At most, it probably could have turned to a 500-page novel. Maybe even 400 pages, but what do I know? I do feel like a bit of it could have been cut, but for the most part, a lot of it was well done, well executed, a lot of action, a lot of detail. I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed this book a lot. I'm so glad I got to read it. I'm looking forward to watching the movie adaptation. And also, now that I've read this, I do definitely want to watch The Running Man. and The Longest Walk, because those are two very dystopian stories with like deathmatch, battle royale, Hunger Games, reality show game situations about being the last person alive in a like terrible dystopian idea of a reality game show situation, deathmatch kind of thing. But I do suggest people read this. It's a really good read. I was entertained. I was enjoying it. I would have been done with this book a lot sooner if I had taken more time to read it, because I usually read on the train or the bus, and usually right before I go to sleep, so it doesn't give me as much time every day to read. If I give myself like an hour a day to read, plus my transit reading and my reading before I go to bed, I would have like probably finished this so much sooner. So I will say in reading this book, it has taught me that about myself, that I just need to give myself more dedicated, mindful time to read. Even if I have to just start like with 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a half hour of just everyday reading just to kind of get through a book, I will have to do that, because I would have definitely gotten through the book so much faster. It's not that it's boring or it's terrible. It does have its laggy moments, but they don't last as long because there's so much action and so much backstory and drama and just story within this book that it keeps you intrigued, entertained, and connected. Definitely check out Battle Royale. It is quite the entertaining book, and I'm looking forward to watching the adaptation. Next up, I am going to read More Happy Than Not and Hunger by Roxane Gay. I am out this bitch like Fleek.